everybody's microphones on? All right, it is 7 o'clock, April 8th. Welcome to this meeting of the South Kingstown Town Council. It's a regular session meeting. We're lucky to be joined by the school committee for this session to look at the budget. First order of business is the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And if everybody was here last night, you saw much of what's going to happen tonight. The first thing to do is a roll call. Here?
Here. Here. Here.
Here. You'll expect some of the school committees still to filter in as time goes on. But Steve, why don't you again go through what's on the docket?
I wanted to start off tonight with an announcement on something that occurred today that I think is all good news. Last week on April 2nd, Moody's Investment Service reaffirmed our AA1 rating. Our refinancing of $6.9 million worth of municipal and school bonds went to sale today. There were 8 syndicates that bid in for the refunding of the bonds. The lowest qualified bidder is FTN Financial Capital Markets out of Memphis, Tennessee. And they bid a price of 1.56977% on the bonds. The bonds will be payable over the next 12 years. When we came to the council in March, we had estimated that the present value savings would estimated at $468,000. Based on the prices that were received, it'll be $568,000 in reduced costs over that 12-year period. I do not recall seeing 8 syndicates at one bid opening in the past. I think it speaks well to the Moody's rating that was reaffirmed, as well as the bond prospectus that was prepared. I want to give special recognition and thanks to our finance director, Trish, who has spent a considerable number of hours not just providing the prospectus, not just dealing with the questions that were necessary to be answered with Moody's, but in terms of working with our bonding consultant to be able to bring this sale to fruition. And the amount of savings that we're talking about in terms of on a present value basis is about, was it 8%? 8.2%. 8.2%. So that's an excellent achievement for the community as we go forward over the next 12 years in terms of reduced debt service costs. Certainly that's not part of the 15-16 budget, but I thought it was important to be able to make the announcement. We'll have the information to you. We'll either get it to you in the packet for tomorrow, or you'll get it Monday night. I'll have it at the council meeting. We've still got some loose ends that need to be tied up on the memorandum and the sale. But again, all good news. I will, however, comment that while we will be looking at reduced bonding costs, understand that about 3.2 million of the 6.9 million are school bonds. So that means that the 30% reimbursement that we get from the state receives the interest savings as well. So so it won't be all property taxes, but it'll be that portion that belongs to the state, and rightly so, because the state only reimburses us at the 30% rate of principal and interest payment. So obviously, if we have a reduced interest payment, then they're going to be reimbursing us at a slower rate, but at a lower rate. But at the same time, it's certainly good news. And again, we're helping the state of Rhode Island and reducing what their requirements will be over the next 12 years. anything that we can do.
Great
for
job,
the state.
Trish.
So again, special thanks to Trish as far as the time that she's put in on this and the amount of time I've irritated her on getting things done. Tonight is the second of the public hearings on the preliminary budget that was adopted by the town council in March. The first hearing was held last night. I think persons that are interested in a longer explanation than I'll give this evening can certainly review the video that was provided for last night. I will run through it quickly in case there are any questions that came subsequent to last night's meeting. On page 1 of the document, we show what the general fund requirements are. The total appropriation required is $75,703,000, of which property taxes will be required in the amount of $68.5 million. As I indicated last night, while the document is showing a projection of 8 cents, we're forecasting at this point it will be in the 7-cent range. I mentioned back at the initial budget hearing and again when we did capital budgeting that we were conservative in our estimates as far as new property tax growth. Property tax growth at this point is estimated about $38.5 million, up from the current year at $30 million. So we're seeing an excellent expansion of the tax base over what prior years have been, and certainly is indicative of the economic downturn turning in the opposite direction, and we're seeing growth within the community again. On page 2, we provide the detail on the general fund, and the general fund will be up 1.1% for that $75.7 million program. Of that sum, we're looking at about $67.5 million in current year tax requirements, as well as prior year receipts of about $908,000. We continue to see some erosion in state revenues as we go forward. With the school fund, similar situation. We have only a 0.9% increase in the budget to $59,130,000, and again, about a 2.5% loss in terms of state aid dollars. The next 3 funds that are shown are the leisure services programs, Peacedale Offices, Neighborhood Guild, and the Senior Services Program. Only Senior Services receive a contribution from property taxes, and that amount this year will be $402,000. The senior program is reflective of 4 individual programs that are offered, one for seniors, one for nutrition program, one for our adult day services program, and the 4th for the operation of the senior program. Neighborhood Guild, a major portion of the $823,000 operating budget comes from Guild trust funds in the amount of $446,000, which pays for approximately 90% of the overall operating costs associated with that facility. Peacedale Office Building, private sector rents are generating about $88,000 of the $97,000 program. Other services are the leisure service programs that are operated there that are generating in excess of what their cost is, about $14,000. So you can see the revenue to expense in the Guild is where returning more income than expenses. What that does is allow us to set aside capital dollars for continued refurbishment and upgrades of that facility. We are continuing to review both Peacedale and Neighborhood Guild in terms of additional energy improvements that can be made there. We may hold back on the energy improvements on Guild until we see what the $1 million in capital spendings will provide. But since there are reinvested income dollars that are available within the trust funds, we would be able to do some additional work if, in fact, we saw a reasonable buyback as far as the efficiencies that could be introduced. The Next page, on page 3, we present the utility funds, our water, wastewater, and solid waste programs. The cost of the water fund is down about 5.6%, and that's because we saw a $87,000 decline in projected capital improvement spending for the 15-16 year. We're not anticipating any rate increases for water fund. For the wastewater enterprise fund, we're looking at a 6.7% expenditure increase, but as I've cautioned in the past, this is a regional operation, and the funding sources include the University of Rhode Island for $653,000 and the town of Narragansett for $909,000. South Kingstown rate base for the users within those systems will generate about $1.75 million of the $3.6 million program for the 15-16 year. We will be looking at one component rate increase that would be for excess water use, where we'll be recommending an increase that will go into effect for the 2016-17 year. We've put rate increases through 12 months in advance of the actual implementation date so that the public has awareness as to what the fee changes would be, rather than doing it in a retroactive manner. The bottom of page 3 shows the budget summary. Overall, we have a total municipal program proposed for the 15-16 year of $91,181,000. That's inclusive of the 8 funds that I've just walked through. Again, as far as the line item that says less interfund transfers, that $50,720,000 is reflective of 3 transfers to the school fund, to the wastewater fund, and to the senior program of tax dollars that are contributed to those 3 funds, so they can't be counted twice. That's why they're subtracted out. So while we're showing a cash flow of $141 million, our true cost for operations will be the $91.1 million. In addition to that, capital budget that's been adopted by the council by the end of January will also be expensed, where we're looking at several $million in capital expenditures that will go out through that those program elements. The last page of the warrant this year has 2 transfer directives. One, the first is the transfer directive associated with the capital improvement program. This provides for the money to be transferred out of the general fund into the multiple capital reserve funds from which the capital projects are actually executed. The second item is a transfer from the general fund to the compensated absences reserve fund, which is the fund that is used to pay retiring employees severance requirements. As I noted last night, we've got liabilities if we were to close the town down from all operations of about $1.8 million. We have $1.66 million that's assets that are in retained earnings. So we've got less than $200,000 that is a liability that would have to be addressed. This $100,000 from the police department anticipates retirements of between 2 and 3 officers during the year. If the $100,000 is not expended, then the money, whatever the balance is that's left, gets transferred into the compensated absences reserve fund. If more than $100,000 is necessary, only $100,000 would be charged to the police department's operating budget. The remainder, any excess, would come out of the compensated absences fund, but obviously it would also reduce what the liabilities were for future purpose. That concludes the brief summary of the warrant of the preliminary adopted budget. I would note that the public has 2 specific points of additional revision or correction, and that would be that they could request the council prior to adoption of the final budget, which is scheduled for the last regular council meeting in in April, they could ask with 20 signatures of 20 qualified electors to either, to have the council address either increases or decreases. By charter, the council would be required to actually address each of those petitions that would be filed in advance of any final action on the budget. If members of the public are still not satisfied with the actions of the final adopted budget, they can petition for referendum. To petition for referendum, they would need the signature of 200 qualified electors that would be certified by the canvassing authority and be requesting budget adjustments in either the school fund or the general fund in an amount at or above $250,000. So there's still opportunity for public input and request for council action, or to have action taken directly through an all-day referendum. That concludes my presentation for this evening. I'll certainly answer any questions that may come forward.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any questions or comments from the council or from the school committee at this point? All right, then open it up to members of the public.
I haven't been here in a while. Bob Traeger, Middlebridge Road. Rushed on my kid left me with 0 gas in the car, so I flew over here, and I thought you guys, if I didn't get here in time, this meeting would be over in about 3 seconds. So I'm glad I made it. You know, there's members on the council, a lot of new members, and Carol's been here a while. And I probably first started following the school budget right around the time Carol got on the council. So I think it's fair to say that, you know, I've put my work in on following the budget. And one thing that, you know, just strikes me as common sense is that, you know, when a town's growing with children, you build schools, you increase the budget, you spend more money, you add programs. When a town's student population is shrinking, I mean, common sense to me would dictate that, you know, you don't immediately go the other way, but you start going the other way. And I have seen a little bit of that recently. There's been some teachers that have lost their positions or through attrition. I don't know exactly how it happened. But I'd say it was about 6 years ago when the Wakefield School issue came up, and you know, people were talking about closing it, and there were savings involved, $600,000 possibly. Well, since that time, not only have we closed the school, but we've pushed more people over into South Road and kind of opened that up a little bit more and expanded it. And in that time, we've lost about 300 kids, and that's more than the population that is actually in Wakefield School. So I don't really know what the answer is, but it seems to me that also in that time, I think we were spending about $14,000 a student, and now we're up to about $18,000. So, you know, one of the programs, they're adding 3 new initiatives this year. They're adding a police officer at the middle school. I don't necessarily know why that needs to be done. They have one at the high school. I don't know the actual benefits of the officer at the high school, but I do hear reports that, you know, there's kids that linger in the hall every day. South Kingstown High has one of the highest tardy rates and suspension rates in the state. I mean, comparable to inner city schools. Not for violent offenses, but just for lack of supervision, I guess. So I don't know what the resource officer actually does over there, but I don't see why we need one in Curtis Corner. But I don't know that much about resource officers, so I don't have a lot of experience with that. But the dual language immersion, that's the one that really bothers me the most. Not because, I mean, it may have some educational value. I can't speak to that. I'm no expert in whether or not speaking 2 languages is going to propel someone into a really bright future. But one of the reasons it was given, and it seemed to be the main reason that they were pushing, that Ms. Stringfellow was going for the dual language immersion, is to entice more kids to come to our school. And that bothers me because I don't think that's the function of a school system, a public school system at all. We're not a for-profit entity. We have certain kids that come to our school. We need to educate them, and we need to spend the appropriate funds to educate them, not try to lure kids from out of town to come to our school because, in my opinion, that's no way to make money. That's a losing proposition. So I'm totally against that program. And it's only experimental. It may fizzle out. But if it takes hold, they're starting off with 2 new teachers, an administrator, and 2 new teacher aides. The following year, it's going to be 2 more teachers, 2 more teacher aides, and then it's going to keep growing. So I just see we have fewer kids. We're adding more teachers on a new program that's going to grow pretty quickly. And I just think that deserves more consideration from the council as to why we're spending that money. And I know there's people that in town that just don't come to these meetings, but I've talked to people and I said, why do we have to teach kids Spanish in kindergarten to teach them how to do math? We're already teaching them how to do math in a different way that's confusing to parents. Now we're going to teach them math in Spanish in a different way. So I really think that's something the council should, consider when they're adding money to the budget. Thank you.
That looks like the end of comments from the public. Are there any responses, comments from the...
I just want to say a few things to Bob Traeger's comments. I think we did question the dual language immersion, and my understanding is we're going to see how it goes this year, and I think we do have to take a long, hard look after the year is up, because I also have heard comments from the community that they don't understand why we're spending the money on this. We've also heard about the need for more special ed, money from special ed and those kind of programs. So I think it's a trial period. I think if we're not trying to entice people to come from other school districts, Bob, I think we're just trying to improve on our own, and that's my understanding. Maybe the charter schools would be an option. Instead of going to the charter schools, they might come to the public schools, the traditional public school, and I think that's something we have to look at, and I know Keith has been on top of that the charter schools basically get more money when you look at the whole picture of funding between the traditional schools and the charter schools and how that all plays out. So it's a very complicated formula, but as you may know, Bob, I'm sure you do, that we can't tell the school committee how to spend the money. We allocate the money to the school committee. They are the final decision makers on where the money gets spent. And they did reduce their budget. How much was it, Steve? I think it was, Steve, how much did the school committee reduce their budget by a certain amount after several meetings with us? 250. I was going to say 250, but I hate to just throw out numbers. But we did have lengthy conversations about this, and this was the final product.
I'm not looking at the numbers, but that's from their original request. Is the budget bigger than last year? Yes. All right, so the budget grew from last year. I have problems when people say they cut the budget because it actually grew from last year, and we lost another 50 children in the district, and they're adding programs. So I just want the public to understand that when people say we cut the budget, they cut their initial request. They didn't really cut the budget. They actually added to the budget.
I agree there's a lot of concerns with the dual language immersion. One of the concerns is if, in fact, it becomes successful, because then you're looking at having that in all the elementary schools, and that would be a huge increase in administrators at each of these and new teachers, and I see problems with it both ways. I have also heard from a lot of people that are excited about it and would want it, but won't change their schools to go to it. So they're saying to me, when is it going to be at my school? So there's, if you talk about equity in our elementary schools, this isn't it, and that's a big concern of mine. because you have people that can't do it. If they're a single parent, they can't provide transportation. If they're two working parents, there's a lot of flaws in the way it's being presented. So the dual language immersion in itself might be a good program. I don't personally feel the way this is being put into two of our elementary schools is equitable for everyone. I see problems with it. That being said, again, we don't control how you spend the money. I just see that there could be problems with this. If we come back here next year and it wasn't a success, I don't even know what would rate it as a success. I don't know what the evaluation process would be of this new program. And then if it is a success, are you going to be saying, now we need it in all of the elementary schools? So there is a lot that I'll be curious about going forward with it. But I do think you worked very hard on a very good budget this year and tried to keep it as close as possible. And I think part of your job is coming up with new programs. So, you know, I admire that, and whether it works or doesn't, I see the position you're in with that. So.
Thank you. Any further comments? All right. Well, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. And we are adjourned.
Thank you.